Today I want to kick off my series talking about Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman. My plan is to go week by week, discussing one chapter at a time, breaking down the things that I do and don't agree with, and how I think this is applicable to life. Conflict skills are basically my favorite topic, as weird of a favorite topic as that might be, and I think there's a lot to learn about from this book. And remember, as the author says, this is not a book to be agreed with. Also, disclaimer, this book covers some really hard topics. Even just in the opening paragraph of the introduction, she touches on racist police brutality, domestic violence, and the Palestine-Israel conflict. And the reason that she touches on all of these topics is they are three examples of a person who has relative power in a situation, perceiving the relatively disempowered group or person as a threat when they either haven't done anything or have just stood up to the person in power. And basically the central idea of this book is that too many people conflate discomfort and threat, which are very different things. And this perception of any discomfort or difference as a threat leads to escalation. This also hinges on a lack of differentiation between the past and the present. We see this most commonly in trauma responses. I myself have complex PTSD, so I know what that's like, where instead of being in the present moment, your brain is somewhere totally else saying, this is totally like that thing that happened that one time, and you take that and run with it because that's how your brain thinks it can keep you safe. And so we can see where these things come from and then still also learn to not be totally beholden to them. And hopefully through learning about conflict skills, we can learn to be comfortable with difference, because difference is the root of conflict. And that doesn't mean that we have to look at every difference and have the biggest conflict ever and blow up about it. One of the big overreactions that Sarah Schulman talks about a lot in this book is shunning. And I'm sure every single person watching this has been blocked on Facebook over like a stupid fight about a TV show, or ghosted by an ex without ever being told what they did. Like, I think we all are familiar with that kind of reaction. And I'm sure plenty of us have shunned people too. That's gonna be, I think, the hardest part of going through this book, is finding those habits that are listed in it that like we also do, and that's like maybe not super comfortable to read about how that's not an okay thing. But one thing I really like about this book is that Sarah Schulman keeps bringing focus back to what the community can do in a time of conflict, rather than it just being on the individual to like try harder, be better, learn better skills. Because like you actually have to be supported and safe to feel supported and safe enough to actually try new things, to be vulnerable enough to apply these skills. A line that I really liked was that she mentioned that we live in a culture of underreaction to abuse and overreaction to conflict, because those two things get conflated. So abuse is seen as just a conflict, and all conflict is seen as abuse, and neither of those things are really serving us. So we have to learn to differentiate them so that we can take things as seriously as they need to be taken and give the appropriate responses. And that's not to say conflict shouldn't be taken seriously. It should. It should just be taken seriously in a different way than abuse should be taken seriously, because they're different things. I feel like YouTube is going to be a place where I just like take little sidebars and clarify myself a lot, because I don't really get to do that in TikToks. Because like, I don't have a time limit on this, and that's kind of cool. This is literally my second YouTube video, so I'm still just marveling at it. Okay, back to the book. Because she talks about both interpersonal relationships and the state and how the state treats people, one of the big points of the introduction is talking about prejudice and how to combat it. And I'm going to tell you, it's not by shunning. It's by increasing how much contact you have with people from a group, and literally even just considering and thinking about having positive interactions with someone from a different group from you can lower your prejudice towards that group. Like, you can just make the active choice to be less ignorant about a group of people and then feel better about them. The human brain is really cool. The last part of the intro that I want to touch on today is that because this book is about both our interpersonal relationships and our relationship to the state, the author says that the individual's inability to problem solve serves the state. And this is a thing that we'll get into much more in the coming chapters. Basically, if we all keep freaking out and calling the cops on each other, then the cops and the courts are going to be doing great. So maybe we can learn a few things about, involving them a little bit less in our own interpersonal stuff, and learning to be the arbiters of our own relationships instead of making the police do it. Join me next week when I talk about Chapter 1, In Love, Conflict is Not Abuse. And if you like what I do, like, subscribe, and maybe check out my Patreon. Thank you to those of you who have already checked out my Patreon. You're making this happen.